Well, hi everybody, and thanks for joining me today. And today's problem is I'm going to be trying to fix a wonky wheel on a suitcase. The other part of this problem is that I bought this suitcase, and after one use it was damaged in transit, so this has got to go in the bin. But what I am going to do is use the wheels off this. So here's the wonky wheel, and the problem is that when you try and wheel it, it gets stuck in one direction and then goes off like a shopping trolley with a mind of its own. So we'll undo the 4 screws, the drill to make quick work of that. Okay, with those 4 undone, this just pops out. There we have it, the 4 screws sitting there, and the only part of this I need is the housing itself. So I've got to drill the wheel, drill that centerpiece out. Okay, off we go with the operation. Okay, that certainly did the trick, and as you can see, loads of swarf around. You don't want that on bare hands. Right, next thing to do is to remove this axle and the wheel. Okay, there's the washer coming off. Okay, there's the housing coming off. Now this is the only bit that I want. The rest of it is practically scrap. So one of the problems that I've got is the housing itself is just made of plastic, and the wheel axle or the wheel spindle fits through this hole here. It doesn't appear to be very thick to me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a metal plate on top here, and then I'm going to drill through here, through the metal plate, and that will allow the spindle to have more support from the metal plate itself. What I'm going to do is make a template out of cardboard. I've already done it, I'll show you how I did it in a minute. And that will then be bent into that shape there. I will then transfer that to a piece of metal, bend the metal in the same way, bend it like so, and then I'll drill it in the 4 corners here, and that will allow me to drill through one side and come out there, and that will give the spindle for the wheel a lot more stability. Okay, here's the piece of metal. I've just done the first bend. I've made that top bit just a fraction longer, and I'll mark it up for the second bend. Okay, there's my piece of metal bent nicely. Just offer it up against the template. It's pretty good. Right, so now I've got the centre of all the holes. Punch that, drill it out, see if it fits. Okay, they all line up nicely. So here's all the components laid out that I'm going to use on the old suitcase. So here's the chassis from the newer suitcase. So this one's in good condition, swivels quite nicely. And there's the wheel. And here's the axle for the wheel that had to be drilled out and then cleaned up. And here's the pivot which goes up through the middle. So the pivot for the chassis itself passes through there. That's been drilled out to 5mm so that the 5mm bolt can pass through the centre. Then that assembly goes into the chassis. Then we have a washer passes over here. That makes the chassis swivel quite nicely onto the part of the suitcase that receives the chassis. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is apply some grease, so that will allow this to swivel a bit more easily. This is where the washer is going to sit, and this will just allow it to spin a little bit more freely. In it goes, and now I can put this on the other side. Okay, here's the other side, and here's the bracing piece of metal which will give the wheel a bit more stability as the bolt comes through here, and this is the bit that the chassis will spin on. All I need to do now is to tighten it up. Now adjust this until I get just the right amount of tension, and then the whole thing is in place. So when the wheel's removed from the chassis, you've got to drill out the little lip that would normally keep this axle in place. So that leaves me with the problem of how to resecure it. So what we're going to do is drill a hole, then tap it, and then put a screw inside. Okay. There we have it drilled. And I just start it off. Be very careful to keep it perpendicular. And you can feel it when it bites. And then every half turn or so, back it off. So I've measured how far I can go down. I've measured on the tap itself and made a little red mark. Let's see if you can see the red mark. Get it into focus. There you go. There's the red mark. The last part then is to mount the wheel in the chassis, put the axle through, and then put the little screw into the newly tapped recess. A little bit of Loctite inside the thread. Tiny washer. Stop the bolt from pulling through. Wheel spins quite nicely. I don't want to over tighten this because it pulls the supporting arms of the chassis in. So as long as the wheel spins nicely and that spins nicely, we're all done. Put the caps back on. Makes it look good. Also, if any of the nuts and bolts come out, at least they'll be contained. Okay, so that's that one finished.